everybody, Sean from Movie Assault here, and it's time once again for another movie review. This time out, I wanted to take a look at 1993's The Last Action Hero, or actually it's just Last Action Hero. This movie stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Austin O'Brien, Robert Prosky, Charles Dance, and a host of other people, including Art Carney and Anthony Quinn. When I started watching this movie, it kind of reminded me of Demolition Man a little bit. I've seen Demolition Man. I watched it earlier. Well, actually, I think I watched it last year. And there was just something very similar about the way it was shot. And so I went back and I looked at the history of Demolition Man and Last Action Hero. They were both released in '93. Both did fairly poorly at the box office. But while Last Action Hero made $20 million over its budget, Demolition Man only basically made back its budget. But yet it seems like Last Action Hero is thought of as a colossal failure, while Demolition Man is looked upon a little bit more favorably. I'm not quite sure why that is, but I just thought it was something interesting that I would throw into the video. But what Last Action Hero is, it's a sort of send-up of big-time action films, big-budget action films, the type of which that Arnold Schwarzenegger would appear in the 80s and early 90s. And it sounds great on paper. You basically have the co-writer of Lethal Weapon, Shane Black, penning a script that's going to be this big-time send-up of action films. You take a director, John McTiernan, who's done Predator and Die Hard, some of those overblown action films, and you cast as your star Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is the biggest movie star of all time at the time this is being put together. While you're at it, go ahead and throw in some musicians and artists like Def Leppard and AC/DC and Alice in Chains and Queensryche and Anthrax. Throw all them on the soundtrack, turn the volume up to 11 and go. And when I mean turn up the volume to 11, I don't mean just the soundtrack, I mean the movie. The plot is about this young boy. His name is Danny, played by Austin O'Brien, and he's given a ticket by his projectionist friend Nick, who's played by Robert Prosky. Nick runs this rundown what used to be a grand old movie theater from the 20s. It's now fallen into disrepair, and it's, I guess, scheduled to be demolished. But Danny comes and watches movies, and he's a huge fan of Jack Slater, this bigger-than-life action star, who's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Danny comes to see the premiere of Jack Slater 4, which is the latest installment of the Jack Slater series. Before it's released, Nick gives him a special preview. And he also gives him this golden ticket, which he says he got from Harry Houdini, but he never used it. He didn't really know what it was for. While watching the movie, Danny is transported into the movie by the golden ticket and immediately begins to interact with Jack Slater and the other characters in the movie. Because Danny is such a action movie aficionado, he knows all the cliches, all the tropes, the villain who gives away his plot instead of killing the hero, guns that never need to be reloaded, cars that explode at the slightest touch, drivers who, drive down the street and don't look where they're going, all of that stuff. Danny's clued in on it. He knows it's going to happen. He knows where the bad guys live because he's already seen part of the movie, so he tries to help Jack Slater out. Jack Slater is convinced he's a real person and doesn't believe he's in a movie. One thing leads to another, and this builds up to a final showdown in the real world between Jack Slater, the villain of the movie, played by Charles Dance, and law enforcement, and everybody else is caught unaware that somebody from the movies has invaded the real world. The idea is fantastic. The execution, for the most part, is really good. It's just that this movie needed to rein it in a little bit, needed a bit more restraint. The idea of, mocking the tropes of action films, it's inventive. Taking advantage of it is really kind of an interesting idea, but the execution of it just really doesn't work. when it's repeated over and over and over again. At first, it's great, but it just really gets annoying. There are a lot of things, comic material that doesn't work. A lot of ideas seem to have been thought up and filmed and included, and some of them probably should have found their way to the cutting room floor. Overall, what works in this movie works really well. The stunts and the special effects, for the most part, are spectacular. Arnold Schwarzenegger, his performance as Jack Slater is a hoot. He also plays himself in this movie. The kid, Austin O'Brien, he's great in his interactions with Schwarzenegger. They have good chemistry. Everything is fantastic in that department. It's just that there's just too much. This movie runs 2 hours and 10 minutes. It should have been maybe an hour and 40 minutes tops. There was a lot that could have been cut out. It's just that it's supposed to be over the top, but it goes too far over the top. And instead of leaving you wanting more, it leaves you wanting less. I know there's a lot of people that love this movie, and I can understand why, because it definitely is fan service for action film fans. There's a lot of stuff in here. There are great cameos from action stars and people who were really popular in the early 90s. The cameos actually remind you every 10 seconds that this movie is a product of the early 90s. And I understand that. And if you grew up with this movie, you probably love it. I had never seen it before, just watching it recently. I view it probably with a different lens than somebody who grew up with it, because I can look back on it, hindsight is 2020, you know, that kind of thing. But I just think it was a great idea that just sort of failed out of the gate. And after watching the movie, I read an interview with John McTiernan, and he said that the film was basically put together as it came out of the camera, which meant that there wasn't much in terms of editing that was done to it. It was just sort of thrown together, and what you saw was what you got. And I really think that it needed another once-over. I guess they were shooting just weeks before it was released to theaters, and it came out and had to compete with Jurassic Park. So that's one of the other reasons it was probably a giant box office failure. But yeah, it's not a terrible movie. It's just disappointing, and I'd give it a 5 out of 10. So there you go. That's my review of Last Action Hero. As always, thanks for watching till the end of the video, or at least this far. And if you like the video, if you like the review, or you're interested in seeing other reviews I've done, please subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell to be notified when I upload a video. And leave a comment below on your thoughts on the movie. If you liked it, that's fine. If you didn't, that's great. If you don't like my review, cool. You know, share your thoughts. So thanks again for watching, everybody. Take it easy.